In this episode, we sit down with Justin Vorel, who is currently midway through an 18-month family road trip from the U.S. down the Pan American Highway with his wife and 3 children. Drawing from a decade of life in Morocco, Justin shares how they transitioned from running a rug manufacturing business to navigating the diverse landscapes of Latin America in a family SUV. Listen to the end so you don't miss the daily spending breakdown that makes this long-term adventure sustainable for a family of 5. Welcome to Wander World School. I'm Susie, a travel-loving money nerd, mom of 2, and our family lives between Spain and Colorado. Here we discuss the stories, logistics, and finances of slow and long-term traveling families and the many ways to learn along the way. Today we get to know Justin Vorel. Thank you for joining me. Welcome, welcome. Please tell me more about you and your family and where you're calling in from.
So we're in Cuenca, Ecuador, and a bit about us. My wife is originally from Alabama in the United States, and I'm from Oklahoma. We didn't really grow up per se in traveling families, but somehow we caught the bug and have really kind of traveled since our 20s. And we have 3 kids. Mine is our eldest. He is 10, Sophie is 8, and Leo is 6. And we lived the last 11 years in Morocco. That's where our kids were born. So we left, my wife and I left the States and built a business in Morocco. We had our kids there. And after about a decade or so, we decided that we'd like to travel Latin America. And so we've dedicated 18 months to driving from the United States down basically the Pan American Highway and traveling through Latin America. So it's an 18-month journey while we continue to run the business online.
That is awesome. We have so much to jump into. I'm so excited. You shared a little bit about the finances and how much this is costing. So we're also going to get into that. But I also want to take it back. Before you had children, I was looking up, you had done some really cool slow and intentional travel. Let's see, I saw research in China, helping a friend start a business in Afghanistan, biking many countries in South America. Tell me more about some quick hits of some of those adventures and where that love for travel originated.
Yeah, I mean, my parents were amazing. They, at 19, let me leave college and move to Taiwan, and so I lived in Taiwan and China for almost a year and a half, learning Mandarin, traveled through the Xinjiang, which is Northwest China, Yunnan, and then really just absolutely loving Taiwan. That was definitely a highlight. Came back, my parents were like, "Hey, we're okay if you wanna go travel the world for the rest of your life, but you need to have an undergraduate degree." So I came back to the States, got my undergrad degree in journalism, and had an opportunity to go to Afghanistan. So I worked in Afghanistan for 2 years, worked for an NGO, did journalism, and worked in agriculture, got to do a bunch of different projects, a bunch of different things in Afghanistan. And after I finished Afghanistan, I had saved up some money and I decided that I was gonna bike all of Latin America. So basically the trip that I'm doing now in a car or an SUV, I did on a bicycle by myself in 2007. And so I always had dreamed of doing it again with my family. So we kinda had an opportunity to do it, and so we took it.
I love it. That's so cool. And what different between the bike and the car? I mean, obviously, there's been some years, there's more people involved.
My wife does not like camping. She does not like the outdoors. She loves the city urban life. And so we are constantly on this pull of like, are we going to be rural? Or are we going to be in urban centers? And so we are in urban centers more than I was on my bike trip. I mean, obviously, we can move a lot faster, we can see a lot more. I mean, obviously, there's more factors to take into with traveling with 3 kids, thinking about their education and thinking about their needs, and, yeah, they're both challenging, but both really good. I like it so much more doing with a family, actually, if I'm honest. Yeah.
That's good to hear. I mean, there's definitely more people involved, there's more opinions involved, imagine with a family, but also there's just more people to share with these adventures. Like, see it through the kids' eyes is one of my favorite parts about travel with kids, especially. And also probably a little easier than always having to carry everything on the bike.
And my wife makes sure we stay in nice Airbnbs. She makes sure we eat nutritious meals, and she makes sure we spend a little bit more money, and so she helps me in that, so we live a little more cushy.
You balance a little bit, exactly. And I'm curious with some of those adventures that you had in your 20s, what are some of the things that had the most meaning for you? And I ask this because I think about the travels I had in my 20s and just how important some of those adventures and opportunities were, and I can't recreate them now because A, I'd be bringing my children, so I might be going to very different locations than I did then.
Mhm.
Also, I wish I had spent a little more time on language learning when I was younger or even in my 20s. I know both of our kids, mine are 6 and 8. We got a ways till they're in their 20s, but I really hope that they launch and want to take some individual adventures. And I'm just curious which of those was most meaningful, was kind of worth that adventure? Because you certainly have done quite a few then.
I definitely think after living in Afghanistan, I left Afghanistan very broken. That was not too many years after the fall of the Taliban, and I just watched too much suffering and too much pain and heartbreak, and so I really left Afghanistan pretty broken person, and so doing my bike trip, not really knowing where I was gonna sleep, not knowing where I was gonna eat, who I was going to meet, and that was back in the day of couch surfing, which I don't know if it still exists anymore, but I couch surfed a lot, and just the way people cared for me, the way people loved me, the way that at that time, we didn't know where the dangerous areas were, and, you just traveled through things, and so it was so special and healing for me to be taken care of, to be invited in, to be given meals, be given money by people too. And it really restored kind of just my hope in humanity and my love for people and the love for travel. Cause you get that, right? Like when you travel, you see some of the most beautiful expressions of humanity and life and the way you meet people and the way that people come out of the woodwork to take care of you. And so yeah, I think that for me is really what I hope my kids grasp and love. They need to be smart, but the world is really amazing, beautiful place full of wonderful people, and when we really know people's names and their stories, it just changes everything for us, it changes our whole perspective, and so I hope my kids live that bold life that they constantly open their hearts to meeting people and traveling.
That's beautiful, and that's a wonderful sentiment that I think a lot of people share. And so I'm hearing that having opportunities where you can build meaning, help a community, but also when you're on the bike, you are going right in through the city. You have a chance to meet people much easier than when we put ourselves in a car, which obviously the car has
Yeah,
a lot of benefits, right? I've always considered long distance biking, even hiking. I listened to a podcast of a family that did the AT through hike, and so you do go
yeah.
through a lot of people and the trail angels and the way people help and the way you care for each other. I really made me want to take on a big adventure like that, especially as my kids get a little bit more able to do some of that stuff. So this has been so great. You are now on this long term road trip journey through Central and South America. You've mentioned it's gonna be about 18 months total. About how far into that journey have you been? You mentioned you started in the US with a SUV and then have worked your way down.
We started in May, and we are almost at the exact halfway point. So, Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, and now we're in Ecuador.
Those are some amazing locations. There's so much to see and do. Now, to get across, is it the Darien Gap, correct?
Yeah,
People ship their car. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it takes a couple weeks and it costs way too much money. But for us, it was easier for us to do that than try to sell the vehicle and buy another vehicle. And we know the vehicle. And so when you're traveling down these remote roads and you're doing these things, you really want to know your vehicle well. And so
Yes. Any tips on picking a vehicle? I mean, certainly people can go all out with these off-road or overlanding vehicles.
if you get into the overlanding group, and I love that there are people in those groups that are like, "No, you don't. You just need good ground clearance." And so we went with the Honda Pilot, which has four-wheel drive. It's got good gas consumption. It's got good ground clearance. It's not the most robust vehicle. It's not a Toyota Land Cruiser, but for us, it's perfect. It's got way more than enough space for us, and we can even have people join us. It's 7 seaters. Family comes and joins us, they can fit in with us too, so
That's the car my parents have. They car camp in the back of it, put the seats down. It's a handy vehicle, like, definitely gets around. What has stuck out for you and your kids especially too on this adventure so far? What are some of those adventures if someone is making the same trip that you would say, "You have to stop here, you gotta see this, you gotta do this, you gotta meet these
yeah,
people."
I mean, I could just go on and on about beaches and mountains and archaeological sites, and in the way that we travel fast. So a lot of the world's community is more like, "Hey, we're here for a month, 3 months, 6 months, and then we move on." We literally move every week. And so for us, like, we move really fast. We do school in the morning time, and then we go explore almost every afternoon. And so I work about 10 hours a week, 10, 15 hours a week, and my wife doesn't work. And so for us, we really are able to kind of be in a sweet spot of doing what we do. But I would say Tikal, the beaches in Costa Rica, the jungle, we stayed in the rainforest in Costa Rica, and it was just magical. The Airbnb we stayed in had its own waterfall, and so going exploring had a it was in a place in the middle of a jungle. Actually, Playa El Coco is a beach that we stayed in southern Nicaragua, which we basically had the whole beach to ourselves while we were there. We did whale watching, we did snorkeling in Belize, we went to San Pedro Island. Of course, all of Colombia is amazing, Cartagena. We went to multiple festivals, carnivals, Medellin, spent $6 million on Christmas lights, and so we did the Christmas lights in Medellin. Um,
I thought at
I
first
don't
you
know, we
said
could go on
you
and on.
spent that,
No, no,
but you
no,
say
no, yeah.
Medellin did.
Yeah, yeah, Medellin did, and so just the most amazing
Yes.
Christmas lights we've ever seen. You wouldn't
Yeah.
know that about Colombia, right? But they love Christmas, and so it's a lot of fun.
Holidays are great that way. They really bring out a lot of cool culture in different communities. And I appreciate that you bring up your speed and tempo of travel. And I think it ultimately, there's no one right or wrong way to world school, to
Yeah,
long term travel. I do think that people that have their own vehicle, a lot of RVers, a lot of road schoolers are on the go more just because you're bringing stuff with you, or especially it depends on just how much the parents need to work and things like that. Your kids are at a great age for schooling. They can knock out a lot
yeah.
quickly and then just go explore. So it all just depends on the ages and stages of the kids, and also, time frame that people have available. And then also it sounds like you're listening to yourselves. Like if you wanted to slow down or needed to slow down for some reason, I'm sure you would. How far out do you all book your travel? Plan for that.
I think the sweet spot for us is about 2 months out. Because we kinda get an idea of like, "Okay, we're getting a little bit thin, let's add an extra week here." Or yeah, about 2 months kinda tends to be our sweet spot. It's enough time where we still can get good deals on places. If you wait really till the last minute sometime on Airbnb, the place that you wanted to book is no longer available, and so for us with Airbnb, about 2 months, 2.5 months out, you can get whatever you want for a really good
Makes
price,
sense.
and you get good deals.
Yeah, it's a balance there. Absolutely. And you mentioned a little bit about the education piece, what the kids do in the morning. Tell me a little more about what your approach to education has looked like while traveling. And I'd also love to hear about any languages that are part of your traveling journey.
My wife and I are horrible at homeschooling, really, but our kids are really, really smart. They're brilliant and they love reading. I think our kids read 1,300 books last year between the 3 of them, and so they read a lot, having access to public library. We do IXL, we do Khan Academy, and we do workbooks. And so for us, it's kinda just a constant mix for each one of them. What's working, what's not working. They do pretty decent on the iPad, but we prefer, like, at least to be 50% workbooks or worksheets, and we have them journaling and writing about what they're seeing, and that seems to work pretty good for us. Languages, so my kids grew up in Morocco going to the Spanish school, and so it's sponsored by the Spanish government, so my whole family's fluent in Spanish. I'm working on it. They language shame me all the time because I'm not fluent. But I also speak Mandarin, and living in Afghanistan, I spoke Dari and then Moroccan Arabic. My wife also speaks she lived in the Reef Mountains of the Berber, so she speaks an indigenous language in Morocco, plus Arabic, plus French, plus Spanish, and then my kids speak, Spanish, French, Arabic, and English. And so it's a lot of language. We're a language family. We love learning languages. The kids like my son's working on Portuguese and, he was interested in Mandarin for a while, and so it's just really part of who we are. And my wife is the most brilliant linguist I've ever met. Like, she can learn a language, like, in a few I don't know, it's amazing. It helps. It helps having one of those in your family, right?
Absolutely. They can keep that momentum going. We were in Morocco last year for spring break, and I was impressed that there's so many different languages that are represented there. And so it makes sense that you were able to speak all the local languages and, of course, incorporating Spanish school. We're up in Sevilla half the year. I do want to get back to Morocco just because it's so close and there's so much to see there. What part of Morocco?
Here in the capital, Rabat Saleh. So our workshop's actually in Saleh.
That was actually our favorite. We flew in and out of Rabat, and I was like, "Why didn't we spend more time here?" It was so cool. So that's so great. I just published an episode today about language learning, and so it makes me so happy to hear just how other families incorporate that. It's also important to talk about the financial and the logistical side. This is what attracted me to your post because you shared a little bit about some of the cost of it. You mentioned a little bit about your business. Can you share more about how that started, and then also how you're able to run that remotely?
Yeah, I moved to Morocco. I'm also a painter, and so my original idea in Morocco was to open an art gallery and bring North African art back to the United States. I got to Morocco, and I probably shouldn't say this on the podcast. I just discovered that the paintings were not good enough. So we pivoted, and I started finding these rugs that were I could buy for $25, I could clean and get repaired and could sell for $500. I actually worked in the rug business in the United States for a few years. I knew the market, I knew the markup, I knew the colors, the designs, and so we did that for just buying and selling for a couple years, and then I kept getting all these requests for bigger rugs and custom colors, and so then we purchased looms and we started manufacturing. I really had this idea that I wanted to create jobs, and I wanted to create my own designs of rugs. And so we learned how to dye yarn and we set up looms and we hired weavers. And so fast forward, basically we're able to fully fund our travel through the business. It was a risk, not being there, but I just told my team, I said, "This is your business, and you guys can run this." And they have, a little bit of a miracle. I go back every 6 months, but things have been going really well. I do most of the sales, and I run the outward facing, and then we have a team. We have about 20 employees, and so they do all the manufacturing and management, and so
That's important when you invest in the right people. I'm sure it's a lot easier to step away like you have to go take care of your own family and your own adventures because there's people that you've trusted, you built up a relationship with, and it takes time to get to that point. That's what I'm hearing. It takes time to sometimes build a business, but in a couple years that might open up opportunities for people to travel or do cool things like that. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the spending snapshot. You shared a little bit about traveling on an average of $126 a day. And that's including gas, accommodations, food, and all those different activities you're taking part in.
yeah, I think for us, I was really scared to do this. I don't know if other people, but for me, the numbers is scary. And when my wife and I first got married, we had a little budget. We didn't have very much money. We were paying off student loans and, we budgeted. But I just knew for us to do this trip, for us not to fight, and for us to be in agreement and to talk about how we're traveling and how we're spending money, we need a budget. So I just made up a budget. Just completely made up. I tried to research and kind of make up, and it was $135 a day. I wanted to be under $135 a day, and we finished our first year under that. So that
That's
was
awesome.
amazing. And the money that we had left over, we rolled it into a trip. We're going to the Galapagos Islands in 6 days. That's 2025 has helped funding 2026 funds. But for us, our insurance, travel, we don't have a lot of flights. We had, I think, one flight, and I guess we had a couple flights in 2025 that was in there. Food for us in more expensive countries, we cook in a little bit more. Like in Costa Rica, I think we ate out twice our entire time in Costa Rica. We just couldn't know, you know? It's like, okay, we can do this. Here's our budget. Like, we're not eating out. Whereas now in Ecuador, I mean, we could literally eat out twice a day if we wanted to. We don't. We eat out 4 or 5 times a week here, and it's $10 for us to eat out. So personally, I like a year budget because there are countries that are more expensive, and there are times that, like, our Galapagos Island trip, like, that may be a couple $1,000s for us to do that 8-day trip by the time you park fees and airfare and everything, and so we try to like, the northern part of South America is gonna be cheaper than when we get down to Argentina and Chile and Uruguay, and so we kinda just balance that out for a year, so it works. This year, 2026, we gave ourselves a $20 a day increase, so now we're working off 155. I just heard my wife say, I would like to us to be able to go back to the States. If we're gonna do this, I would like for us to be able to go back to the States. Well, that's for a family of 5, that's round trip, that's $5,000, and so I think for us, we set kind of the minimum budget for us, which was 135 a day, and then we're raising it a little bit more this next year just to have a little bit more wiggle room.
I bet it helps when you have some data to work with. You know what's possible. You know that you're capable of reining it in if you need to and, saving up for those big adventures. And there's absolutely things that you want to take advantage of while you're so close, right? Going to the Galapagos when you're not right in the same country would just be way more expensive. So you're balancing it. I love that way to think about it.
My wife really would rather she loves the big splurges, and so for us, I can if I book it, it's about 20 bucks a night cheaper on the Airbnb. If she finds it like in right now, we're staying in Cuenca, and this is $27 a night. It's a two-bedroom, two-story overlooking the city. We booked another place in Quito that was $25 a night, and so those when your budget's $155 a day, those kind of nights really, um, help save a lot of money for doing special activities like going whale watching or going snorkeling or going to the Galapagos.
Give your family the ultimate travel tool, the gift of language. Preply's one-on-one native speaking tutors make world schooling more immersive and fun, fitting perfectly into your busy travel schedule. Whether you're preparing for Spain or Japan, start talking today. I've been using Preply for years with great success. Use the link in the show notes to get 70% off your first lesson. It's all about striking the right balance. Have there been any struggles or challenges? We're also going to talk about the wins, of course. I'd like to hear about some of the things that have just been a little difficult as you embarked on this adventure.
The biggest challenge is we loved our life in Morocco, and we had so much great community and friends, and Morocco was home for us. I mean, it is home for us. My kids still talk about Morocco being home and missing friends, and so, it took a lot of convincing, and I don't know if any of our kids really knew what we were getting into when we started or really were actually that excited. And so they trusted me because 'cause I'm their dad, and now as we moved on to doing this and they really love it, they love the school. For my wife is incredibly extroverted. She loves sitting at coffee shops with her girlfriends and friendships in person. And so I think community is probably the hardest. The kids are at a good age where there's 3 of them. And so they've kinda got friends and we call their friends. I think the other challenge, crossing the northern border into Mexico with US-Mexico relationships has been tough. We were in Colombia when Maduro was captured, and so we were close to that, parts of Colombia, parts of Honduras that we traveled through. It takes a lot to make sure you're keeping your family safe, making sure you're staying in the right places, right neighborhoods. It's been challenging.
There is a lot of geopolitical stuff going on, even though day to day, sometimes that doesn't always affect the communities we're in. But you're right. Sometimes there's these things that happen, and of course, safety in kids is always on top of mind. Do you feel like you've been able to meet families along the way? Has the fast travel somewhat gotten in the way of some of that community building hubs or world
The
schooling?
kids, no joke. 2 days ago, we were in the park here. We go to the parks in every city. We met a world schooling family. We didn't know there's a world schooling community here, and the kids are at an event tonight with these other world schoolers. So that's where they are and not here. It helps that our kids are fluent in Spanish. They seem to make friends pretty fast. If we'll slow down and give it a little bit of time, they meet people. Yeah, I think we've met quite a few. Not as many as what I thought. I thought we would meet more. I think it was Costa Rica. We met a world schooling homeschooling co-op group. But I don't know, in Morocco, we were pretty native, and so, like, the majority of our friends were Moroccans, and so I think for our kids, that's pretty natural as we travel, even though we don't have quite as many world schooling people, they do a pretty good job in Spanish and making local friends, so
Yeah, that makes a huge difference. Our kids are in the Spanish school, obviously in Spain. And so I would really like to prioritize a lot more Spanish speaking countries. That's one reason we're trying to make sure that Spanish is a big part of their language learning. I'm curious to take it back. How did you end up picking that Spanish school in Morocco? Was it because you knew that Spanish is such a useful worldwide language, or was there something else in your decision making?
but, I mean, my wife was fluent in Spanish. We love the Spanish, like, style, which is super laid back. The kids dance. And the other option was the French option, which is like very proper, a little more stiff, probably a better education. And so for us, we weren't as much concerned about I'm not really concerned about our kids' education. I want to make sure that they love learning. That's what I care about. And so the Spanish school really provided that because it was just a safe environment where like learning was fun.
Yes, that's so important, especially early on. And even as we're adults, every day that I'm passionate about learning about podcasting, about all these different opportunities, that's because I'm motivated to do it. So I know that when there's internal motivation, kids and adults can do amazing things. But you mentioned a lot of very relevant challenges, especially for long term and traveling families. I'm curious what some of the positive parts have been. What are some of the wins that you've experienced through this adventure?
I think our kids are amazing. They're tougher than us. We've done some challenging things and all of a sudden they're doing it. And, my wife and I are like, "This is tough." And the kids are like, "This is great." I mean, just resilience. It's led about some very challenging conversations, because we come face to face with poverty. We come face to face with all kinds of things, and that's led us to have lots of really incredible conversations. My son jumped like 4 grades this year, and in English, he went from, like, the 5th grade to, like, testing in ninth, 10th grade, and so I love that if they're excelling in this, that they can move ahead, they're not held back by a class, or if they need more help in something, right? Like, they are where they are, so they can be ninth grade in English, and they can be 5th grade in math, and they could be 7th grade in science, and so the education piece has been amazing, and just the beauty, the art. I mean, I love plants, and so we go visit botanical gardens, historical museums, archaeological sites, zoos. I bet you we've been to a dozen zoos, and so the kids know all the animals, so we're walking through and they're like, "Oh, this is the such and such tapir," it's just amazing. It's a truly I hope they appreciate, I'm like, either they're gonna hate me when they're older or they're gonna think my parents are the coolest people in the world in what we did, so
I like to think that they're gonna look back and be like, "That was pretty cool." Because I realize I do look back at the travel opportunities I was given, and I'm like, "Wow, I probably didn't appreciate them as much as I did back then." So, it's nice to have that perspective and hope the same for our kids. I'd love to make sure we get any resources or final tips from you and make sure people can get a hold of you. So, with our lightning round, you can only ever visit or live in 3 countries. What are they?
you have to pick the United States because the kids gotta see their grandparents, yeah. If we didn't include the United States, I would say Morocco, Italy, and Colombia.
Yes, perfect. Best or worst food that you've ever tried?
The best just has to be the amazing fruit, like everything, papaya, mangoes, pineapples, coconuts. I'm a fruit maniac. And so for me, like as we've traveled, there's these people selling fruit on the side of the road and it's always good, amazing. Worse, in Nicaragua, I had the madongo, which is cow stomach, and it's the only food. My kids were so happy that I couldn't eat it because I'm constantly telling them, you guys eat everything on your plate. Don't leave any food ever, because it's there's people in these culture that be glad to have that food, and I could not finish it. Madongo, cow stomach soup. So
That
couldn't do it.
sounds like a rough
I just
one.
couldn't get it down. I could not chew it to get it in small enough pieces.
You won't forget that one. What's one item that you cannot travel without?
I mean, I know this doesn't probably sound right, but for us, the iPad, where we do school and I journal and we write and we do work and we connect with family and we book travel.
It's so handy to have because it does work in a lot of different ways. Favorite book or book genre to read while traveling?
I read everything. I like to keep it fresh, like history, biographies. I read a lot about business and leadership and communication. And
Yeah, it's important when you are in the business world. And what's the first thing you do when you arrive somewhere new? And this is actually especially relevant because you show up in your own SUV, you have all your stuff in the car. What does that look like when you get somewhere new?
well, if I'm doing it well, the kids help me unload. And so we get things moved in, we get set up, we kind of figure out where everything is. If it's a good spot, my wife would take the kids for a walk in the park and I take a nap because typically after driving, I am just tired, especially a lot of these mountain roads. But the next day, like, I get a good night's sleep, get a coffee, I can go exploring with the best of them. But typically when we get in, we typically decompress. Our introverts find a book in a corner and quiet spot.
That's good to have a bit of a routine. Let people do what they need to do because, tomorrow's another day to explore this new location. What's the longest travel day you've had? How many hours was the longest day?
We really try not to travel more than about 8. So I would say 8's our longest. Our sweet spot would be about 4 to 5. And then we make little stops along the way, and I don't like to just drive it straight. Like, I like, "Hey, we're driving, then we eat a lunch, then we drive when we find these waterfalls to go explore, and then we drive," if we're doing it well.
Make a whole adventure of it. Mix it up with some stops, and then you don't even realize it. Now you're in a new location. What is your favorite subject to world school with the kids?
I love finance. I really do. I love teaching the kids about managing money and leveraging resources to buy time back. And so that, and I love agriculture. So I grew up on a farm. So talking to the kids about all the animals and things that we're seeing. And I love, art and history and a lot of just the life skills. Life skills for me, because I think the academic part's really important. It is important, but so much of it really comes down to life skills and being able to do conflict resolution and to be able to work through things. And so a lot of we do a lot of life skill training, and I love that.
That's a big one. I agree. I wanna get my kids a little more into even the entrepreneurial world early on. I think if they can start some side business, just do it now when there's, like, nothing to lose, that would just give them so many skills that even if they go a more traditional route for employment or whatnot, at least they'd have that as something to fall back on instead of like, right now, I've just dived right into the world of entrepreneurship, and there's so much to learn if you haven't done it before. Let's finish up with the one piece of advice for a family just starting out.
The world's not as scary as what you think that it is. You have all these doubts and concerns and scares and all these things, and then you kind of get out there and you realize like it's a really beautiful world. And I wish I would have done this sooner.
That's perfect.
But I do think it's important to figure out your budget. I will say that. I will caveat it to figure out your budget, and you are going to have to work on your marriage. You're going to have to work on your communication with your kids because I think that's hard. It's hard always being together, and it shows a lot of cracks. And so it takes a lot of work, but it's definitely it's worth the challenges and the risk and the hard days.
But every day is hard in its own way, going to the same job every day. So it's just like pick your hard and make sure you're enjoying it along the way. Any resources or things that you'd want to share with families?
I mean, I think the world schooling groups are really good. I mean, I think if someone's interested in driving, join overlanding groups and just read and starting to find out what's possible because you have this crazy idea and you think, there's somebody out there doing it. And so just find them and pick their brain. It's surprising the people who are doing really weird things out there in the world, how willing they are to talk to you. And so just reach out and
Sometimes I feel like there's so many people that are world schooling when you're in these groups, day in and day out, though, you might not meet them all every day, right? But at the end of the day, there's definitely someone out there doing something. I do think the stuff that is like newly being accomplished in this world, the most recent one was Alex Honnold climbing the Taipei 101 last weekend. I don't know if you watched some of
yeah.
that. I'm like, okay, we've reached a point where people are just doing the most crazy stuff in real life. It's okay to just do whatever feels good for you that maybe, yes, other people are doing, but that's cool because we could learn from them. And so I hope that people can follow along with you. Where can they find you, by the way?
Nomad Blue Travel on Instagram. We have almost 0 followers, and I'm okay with that. So maybe there'll be a few more off this podcast, and then yeah, I can share my website. There's a rug website, yeah, if you're interested in rug. But then there's also my email, so you can email there too.
So from here, you'll head all the way down south. And then what after that?
Actually, going to go all the way down to Brazil, and then from Brazil that'll be about June. We'll fly back to Morocco for the month of June and go see friends and community, and then we'll come back in the beginning of July, and then we'll finish Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina, and Chile, and then we fly back to the States for Thanksgiving and Christmas to be with family in the States.
So you'll be spending springtime in the South,
Yeah,
right? Yes, perfect. And then coming back for the winter. Yeah, it takes a while to sometimes adjust
yeah.
mentally.
It's been like 7, 8 years since our kids were in the States for Christmas. So it's time we owe it to the grandparents and we owe it to their aunts and uncles and cousins.
It's hard to have so many people that we want to see all in all different locations while also seeing new things. So I can totally relate to that. But this has been so awesome to hear more about your adventure and your story. And I wish your family well. I'm glad your kids are having a great time. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
What a great episode. Want more? Join us for the virtual World Schoolers Meetup on March 19th. We'll be connecting at 7 a.m. in California, 8 a.m. in Denver, 10 a.m. in New York, 3 p.m. in Central Europe, and 10 p.m. in Vietnam. We can't wait to see your faces and hear about your adventures. Sign up in the show notes. Loving the show? Share it with a travel buddy. See you next time.